Welcome back. As I mentioned before, in each of these calculations, you supply all the variables but one. The computer solves for the missing one. I made those cells blue. You see that the blue cell in each row corresponds to the formula shown at the left of the screen. If you know anything about Excel formulas, you can go into the blue cells and see that I've entered the formula indicated at the left. In entering the formulas, I had to make the following adjustments. I needed to convert the rate from a percentage, shown under the rate column, into a decimal. So I set up the formula to divide that number by 100. This gives the rate in the correct form. I also had to make adjustments to make the answers, the blue cells, come out as positive numbers. Both Excel and your financial calculator treat payments you make as negative numbers and payments you receive as positive. If you don't keep those straight, you'll run into problems. For our purposes, though, I just wanted a positive number to appear in the blue cells, so I had to put the negatives into the formula. When you start doing these calculations on your own, you'll forget and make errors as a result. The way to correct the errors is to be entirely consistent with the positives and negatives. This is actually the reason I have two rows for payments. I couldn't be consistent for both savings to a goal, the second to last row, and the annuity loan situation, the last row. So I had to separate them. If you take a look at the formulas at the left, the order of the variables within the parentheses is the same for all of these formulas, except that the variable you want to solve for is missing from the list. That variable appears outside the parentheses at the far left. If you remember the order, rate, N per, payment, PV, FV, and the type rule, you'll always know the formula, and it appears at the column headings on this spreadsheet. The cool thing, though, is that in Excel, if you have a current version of the program, if you start typing the formula, the program will give you a hint about the rest of it. I'm not going to read these formulas to you. I think you need to work with the numbers instead. I just want to say a few words about the last column, type. As I mentioned before, 1 means the payment is at the beginning of a period, and 0 means that the payment is at the end. What does that mean? Look at the first row, future value. You make a payment and want to find out how much it will be worth after a period of time. The payment is made at the beginning, so the type is 1. I've entered the 1 for you. If you don't enter it, the program will assume a 0, which is wrong for future value calculations. The same is true for the saving to a goal calculation in the second to last row, because it is really just a bunch of future value calculations added together. The rest of the calculations assume the payment is made at the end of the period. Think about why this is true. Remember that present value is the opposite of future value. Finally, in addition to the type cells, I grayed a few more cells out to avoid confusion. In the time and rate rows, I grayed out the payment cells. I thought too many things would be going on if you tried to include payment changes. I left this out, so when you are working on these lines, you will be able to concentrate on a single payment. Finally, I grayed out cells in the payment calculations. If you are savings to a goal, you can assume you start with nothing. This isn't always true, but let's assume it for simplicity. And when you are paying off a loan or receiving an annuity, we are going to assume that the balance is 0 when the payments are complete. This is not always true, but it's true often enough that we don't want to confuse the issue. So now is the time to stop and go into the Lesson 4 spreadsheet. Feel free to make changes in the white cells. As you play around, this is essentially the same thing you would be doing if you were using a financial calculator. You'll have to look at your calculator's instructions to find the exact buttons to push, but the calculators basically work just like this spreadsheet.